Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Thursday at TC. Has anyone learned anything this week? Yes? Excellent! We love that. How about, has anyone met any cool new people doing interesting things with data? Yes? Oh, I'm seeing a few. Some of you over there kind of, maybe not. Well, in any case, we are going to continue both of those activities right now. I am Stephanie Potter. I'm a senior product manager at Tableau. This is my 4th Tableau conference. I adore the opportunity to meet all of you and talk to you about your data. And more than that, I love going to sessions because I too learn things, and it's always fun to keep learning. So, it's my privilege this morning to introduce a woman who is going to help us do both of those. Chantilly is a Zen master. You may have seen her on stage at Iron Viz last night. Did anybody watch Iron Viz? Yeah, pretty awesome. Well, it turns out that there's a conference theme you may have heard called Building Data Culture. Has anybody heard the phrase building a data culture? Yeah? All right. This is the woman who is on the forefront of that push. She has a passion for teaching people how to tell their stories with data, and she utilizes that passion both in her job as a VP of Training and Data Visualization at Lovelytics. Also, yeah, I know, pretty kick-ass. Yeah. She also has this amazing philanthropic reach. She is on the advisory board of the Data Literacy Project, and she is the founder and CEO of Millennials and Data. So this is a woman who spends both her job life and her free time immersed in data and teaching how to build a data culture. And one of the things that helps build that data culture is being able to tell the story visually in a beautiful, clean, effective way. And if you go to her portfolio, the amount of vizzes, even available just on public, that show you example after example of clean, clear data visualizations, things on Myers-Briggs or national parks or bicycles that have been stolen in an area. It's amazing. So, I would love to have all of you give a big round of applause as we welcome Chantilly to tell us all about how to design for the non-designer.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction. How are y'all enjoying the conference so far? Alrighty, are y'all ready to learn about designing in Tableau? If you are, let me hear you say yeah. On the left side, let me hear you say yeah. On the right side, you gotta do better now. Let me hear you say yeah. Alrighty, I'm Chantilly Jagannath. I'm the Vice President of Training and Data Visualization at Lovelytics, and I am here today to teach you the design secrets for a non-designer. So about me, as I mentioned, I'm a VP at Lovelytics. I am also the founder and CEO of Millennials and Data, a nonprofit organization that I started a few years ago that is dedicated to bridging the data literacy gap among millennials. I am also a newly nominated Tableau Zen Master, and thank you. And I'm pretty excited to be here. But most importantly, outside of all of that, I am not a designer. Would any of you all consider yourselves a designer? Raise your hand if you're a designer. Okay, all right. That's it? One person. Alrighty, so let me tell you why I am not a designer. I'll start with where my journey began in using Tableau. So I was a student at Howard University, and my professor gave us 1 million plus records of data. I was a freshman, and at that point, the only tool that I knew to analyze data was Excel. And I didn't know that trying to open up 1 million plus records in Excel would crash my computer. So just imagine 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm doing this assignment, it's due at about 8 or 9 in a couple of hours, and my computer keeps crashing. And the first place that I turned to was Google. And I simply typed in Google, free software to analyze large amounts of data. And that's where I ran into Tableau. And I simply watched one video on YouTube that night. I brought that data into Tableau, and here was the first visualization that I've ever created in Tableau, all right? So I went to class the next day and I presented this. I didn't even bother to take the sheet 4 off the top of the dashboard. But I received an A in this assignment, and it was at that point in my college career that I knew that this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to learn more about analytics. I wanted to learn more about Tableau, and that's where I continued my journey in learning more about Tableau, both on the job and off the job. And throughout the years, here are some of the visualizations that I've been able to create as of today. Thank you, thank you. So today, I want to walk you all through how I went from the visualization that you see on the left to the visualization that you see on the right. And as of today, I still do not consider myself a designer. Here are the 5 design secrets that I'll talk to you all about today. 1, how to gather requirements efficiently and effectively. 2, how to use a template, how to create a template. 3, how to incorporate fonts and icons to your advantage in your dashboards. 4, how to choose colors that matter. And then last but not least, I'm going to show you all how to uncomplicate fonts. Y'all ready? Let me hear a yeah. All right now, we'll start with gathering requirements. So the first thing that you do when you're creating a dashboard is you receive a bunch of requirements from a client probably. And the first thing you want to do is you want to understand the overall goal of the project, right? Second, you want to determine your audience's analytical maturity. You want to understand if your audience is familiar with Tableau or if they're familiar with creating data visualizations in PowerPoint or in Excel. Next, you want to incorporate your end user's preferences. So 9 times out of 10, you begin to have a conversation with your end users about what types of colors they would like to see in the dashboard, what are some of their preferences, if they've looked at another visualization that they want to use as a baseline for creating their new one. Then you want to take their requirements and you want to refine them and you want to start to prioritize those requirements that they give you. Then you want to do a high-level data discovery to understand where this data is going to be coming from that you're going to use in your visualization. And last but not least, you want to determine the views that are going to be needed to answer the question. Now, if all of those 6 different points, with all of those 6 different points, I've created a dashboard requirements document to help organize the client or the end user's thoughts into a few simple pages. So for the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you all through this dashboard requirements document, and a surprise at the end is that I'll tell you that this will be made available to you. Alrighty, so the first thing you want to do on your dashboard requirements page is you want to understand the overview of the dashboard itself. You want to understand the title. What are you looking to name this dashboard? What's the overall goal? And then an estimated time frame of when they're looking to have this dashboard completed. Then, as I mentioned before, you want to understand your audience's analytical maturity. So as I mentioned, is your audience familiar with using Tableau? 9 times out of 10, an executive is not really familiar with the tool, and they're just looking for a static image or something that they can take to their board or just review on a daily, quarterly, however much cadence basis. So when you're selecting your audience's analytical maturity or you're trying to understand it, it's okay to select more than one. It's just you want to make sure that your selections are right next to each other. So an executive and a manager, they might have the same analytical maturity, but an executive and an analyst, 9 times out of 10, those are on a very wide scale, a different scale. Next, you want to understand your user's display mode. How many of you have created a dashboard, and then at the end you've had to resize it? Okay. So it's easier to determine your end user's display preference in the beginning so that you do not have to do all of that rework in the end and adjust the display mode, right? Sometimes I build my dashboards all floating. Now just imagine trying to resize a floating dashboard in the end and the amount of time that you would have to spend. Next, you want to understand your user's overall display goal in terms of whether they're looking to display it on a web, whether they're looking to have this as a PDF and a PowerPoint or as an image. This is because if you're designing for a web, you can integrate scrolling, right? Versus if you're designing for a PDF or a PowerPoint, you kind of want your dashboards to fit into a particular frame. And last but not least, you also want to ask your users up front, what are some colors that you want to have incorporated in your dashboard? What are some dashboard filters that you want to display? Is there a visualization that you've seen, and is there a link that can show me that visualization, right? Now for your view. Once you have your dashboard, or once you have the outline of your dashboard, a dashboard is a combination of multiple worksheets. Now I've created this view for every single worksheet that's going to go on the dashboard. So the first thing you want to do is provide the name of the view, the name of a single chart. And you want to understand a high-level description of that. Next, you want to determine the data fields that are going to be needed to build this view. So if you're looking at sales per region, one of your main fields will be your sales, and the other field will be your region. Next, you need to determine if there are any calculations that are needed to build this view, right? What is sales? Is sales named sales? Do you want to look at the average of the sales? Do you want to look at the sum of the sales? This is where you want your user to outline all of the calculations that may or may not be needed to go into this view. Next, you want to determine your end user's formatting needs. Do you want to see the top 5 bars highlighted, the top 5 regions with the highest sales highlighted? Next, determine if this view requires a filter. Are we looking at all of the sales just for 2018? Are we looking at the sales just for 2017? This is where you want to incorporate all of the filters that are needed for this one particular view. Then let's head to the data source, right? Sales may be in one table, regions and profits may be in another table, and here's where you want to understand exactly where the fields are coming from that you're going to need to build this view. And last but not least, here's where we will understand any additional preferences that the user might have for this particular view. So let's walk through what I call the dashboard requirements and actions. And here's a use case that I'll present you all with. The VP of sales wants to keep track of sales generated within the company. Overall, she wants to know how much each region brings in and which segment generates the most revenue for each region. Currently, this information is provided in an Excel workbook and shows sales per category, sales per segment, monthly sales, and the number of orders. And here's what that dashboard currently looks like. So the overall goal of this new dashboard is to create something that's interactive, that analyzes the company's sales data, and that can be shared with the regional leads as well as the VP of the sales teams. And here are some bullet points that this VP wants to see highlighted within the new dashboard. So if I were to take these requirements and transfer them to the dashboard requirements document that I just showed you all, here's what it will look like. The first section is to outline the overall goal of the project, which you saw on the previous slide. It's to create an interactive dashboard that can be shared. Next, we know that the VP wants to view this dashboard, and the VP is an executive. But the VP is also looking to share this dashboard with the regional leads. So here's where I've selected both the executive as well as the managers. Next, this dashboard is mostly going to be used on the web. So here I've just selected the laptop, and I've specified exactly how long and how wide I want this dashboard to be. Next, the dashboard will be used on the web as well as in a PDF. And then last but not least, the VP has listed out the company filters, the dashboard filters, that will be used on this dashboard, the company colors, which are just the Tableau brand colors, as well as a link to a dashboard that he or she has previously seen on the web that they would kind of want to model their new dashboard after. So the next thing that we want to do is, of all of those points that we've listed, they each will require their own individual chart. So in this example, I'm going to take one of those goals and I'm going to place it into a worksheet, the worksheet view. So for this chart, we're going to focus on customers, orders, sales, profit for each region. The data fields that will be used are the region, the customers, the orders, the sales, the profit, and the profit ratio. In order to determine the customers, the orders, and the profit ratio, I would need to know the calculations that the VP or the regional lead wants to use. For customers, we're going to use the count distinct of customer ID. For number of orders, we're going to use the count distinct of order ID. And then for profit ratio, we're going to use the profit divided by the sales. There aren't any filters that we're going to need for this dashboard. And then the data source for this, even though it is a Superstore data set, I've just placed here a simple way of showing you how you would outline the data source as well as the username and the password information. And last but not least, for this particular view, we want to see it as a text table. Now, if I were to take each of those requirements that I listed earlier and place them into a document, I would have 6 different sheets, 1 worksheet for each view. And now altogether, I have 7 different sheets that help outline exactly what the client is looking for, what's in scope, what's out of scope. Now let's move to creating a template. Now that we've had our requirements and we've analyzed this data, we've determined the insight that we want to convey to the audience. Next, we want to create a grid-like template to help organize our thoughts. So how many of you currently build templates or blueprints before you start to build your dashboard visualization? Okay, a lot of you. How many of you do that specifically in Tableau? Okay. Do you all use paper and pencil, the rest of you? Oh, old school? Is that what I heard? So I actually use both, right? I use both Tableau and I use pencil and paper. But even if I do use pencil and paper, I still create a grid-like template within Tableau. And I'm going to show you all how to do that. So the first thing you want to do in creating a template is you want to take those requirements that you were given and you want to start to prioritize them. And the reason you want to do that is because it's going to help you organize exactly how you want to lay out your dashboard. So here I've taken all of those points that were listed in the previous requirements and I've organized them 1 through 6 based off of level of importance. So the first one is we want to look at the overall number of customers, orders, sales, and profit. Second, the monthly sales per region. Third, the metric details per region. Fourth, the region segment sales. Fifth, the sales per state. And last but not least, the sales per subcategory. So that's step 1 in creating your template. Second, you want to use either blank text boxes or pencil and paper to start to outline your dashboard. And here's what that will look like inside of Tableau. So I've taken those 6 requirements and I've simply used the Tableau blank boxes, text boxes that are objects, placed them onto the dashboard, applied a simple black border around them, and then I've provided the chart details that will now go inside this box. So the title as well as the chart type. So up top we have our bands, then we have the details for the sales per region, and then we have our sales per state as well as our bar chart to the bottom right-hand corner. Next, we want to design to a grid. This is a graphic design criteria that is always mentioned when you're looking to design, whether it's web content or newspaper content, any content, a graphic designer always tries to design to a grid. And that's pretty much why I use tiled when I'm designing business dashboards within Tableau so I can snap things to a grid. So here, the dashboard that I've created is a 5-chart grid. You see how at the bottom, I've perfectly aligned the sales per state, sales per subcategory to align on the right-hand side with the chart. See that? Now, if I wanted to change from a 5 to a 4-chart grid, this is what that would look like. To a 3-chart grid, this is what that would look like. So when you're creating your dashboard template, be sure that you're designing to a grid. Next, incorporate bands and add context. How many of you know what bands are? How many of you do not know what bands are? Alrighty, so bands are big, angry numbers. You can substitute the A for whatever you please. So whenever I'm designing a visualization, I always incorporate bands at the top of my dashboard. And the reason being is because I feel as though bands provide high-level context about the details that your user is about to see. So if we're breaking out our dashboard and looking at the sales per region, it's always good to have a high-level number at the top that lets you know what the aggregated or the overall number of sales are. So when you're incorporating bands, be sure that you place them at the very top of your dashboard so that it's a summary before your users get into the details. You can even place your dashboard or your bands on the left-hand side of your dashboards because users are typically reading top to bottom, left to right. But what you don't want to do is place them at the right-hand side or at the bottom. And this is because As I mentioned before, bands are your most important information that it's pretty much like aggregating and outlining your dashboard. And your users are reading that first, and you never want to place the most important information on the right or at the bottom. Next, use size and position to show hierarchy. As I mentioned, your users are reading top to bottom, left to right. And you want to lay those points out exactly how your users are going to read this dashboard. So here we've placed the bands at the top. We've also placed the filters at the top of the dashboard. And then we've organized all of the additional points based off of order of importance. As you can see, the next chart is the monthly sales per region. That was the second point. So that's why that's number 2. Then number 3, number 4, number 5, and number 6. Now, many of you may be wondering why I place filters at the top of my dashboard. And this is because users tend to get filter happy, right? And the more filters you have on your dashboard, the more you're increasing or delaying performance and updating your dashboard. So I always place dashboard filters at the very top because it's the most prominent real estate. And if you have way too many of them, then your dashboard isn't going to start until the middle. So it kind of limits the number of filters that your user will want to place on the dashboard. Next, while you're creating your template, begin to think about where you want to place icons and how you want to start to color your dashboard. So here, I've placed the logo in the top right-hand corner. If you're ever confused on where to place a logo, place it in the top right-hand corner, and it'll also eliminate you from wanting to place your filter in the top right-hand corner of your dashboard. I hate those, by the way. Next, I typically like to incorporate a nice icon with my band, right? Something small, something that catches the user's eye and provides a little bit more graphic detail. So do not overcomplicate your use of icons in the dashboard. On the left-hand side, I've only incorporated 4. But on the right-hand side, once you start to see how pretty those icons look, you might just want to keep dragging them. Please don't. Just try to incorporate just enough, and that's why I limit them just to my band area. So once you have your dashboard laid out in a template, fill in your template. So here I filled in the template based off of the worksheets that were outlined in the requirements document, and all I did was drag and drop them into the tile grid and delete the blank box. So here are my template guidelines. Now, once you've created your template, reuse your template, right? A lot of individuals say whenever they see a viz on my Tableau public portfolio, they know it's a Chantilly viz. And what they don't know is that I'm really not designing these things from scratch anymore, right? Check this out. But the key is I publish them months apart. So you have no clue that I've basically taken this NFL viz on the right-hand side and used the template that I created for the cardiovascular disease, which I published maybe a year in between. And here's another example, probably 6 months apart here. Same type of template, different use of color, different use of icons. You would never know. Same here. Layout, fill in, reuse. Let's talk about using art to your advantage. So using simple images and icons can take your dashboard from basic to visually appealing. One, you want to use icons that communicate meaning and are easy to recognize. A house typically means you're going back home, right? You're going back to the home page of your dashboard. If you have multiple dashboards and you've built in a landing page, a home button is easy to identify with most users. The information icon, 9 times out of 10, users associate that with more context, more information about your dashboard. And the database icon, if you hover over it, could potentially provide you with information about the database. So you want to use icons that are easy to identify. Here, for this dashboard, I've used a person to identify the number of customers. I've used a box to indicate the number of orders that were shipped. I used the sales tag to indicate the sales. and then a money bag to identify the profit. Things that are simple and easy to identify. Next, you want to include a label or add context for every icon that you add to your dashboard. You never just want to add an icon just to add it. Always provide your end users with additional context. If you're using the home button, tell your user to click on the home button to return to the home page. If you're using an information icon, tell them to hover over it so that they can view more information. Same for the data source. So here, because I've associated the icons with the bands, the labels for the bands are the identifiers for my icons: customers, orders, sales, and profit. Here's another example of providing context for your users for icons, in this case, a logo on your dashboard. I want the users to know that if they click on this logo, it's going to take them to the Tableau conference homepage. Most users aren't going to know to just click on my logo. So that's why I've provided additional context so that they know by clicking on this what the action will be. Now, if you don't want to place it at the bottom of your image, you can also place it in the tooltip. You can bring in your logo as a shape within Tableau, within your shape repository. And then once you do that, you can create a custom worksheet that has this one shape on it and place in a tooltip that says, click here to go back to the conference homepage. Simple is okay, nothing too creative. Now, as I mentioned, once people start adding icons to the dashboard, they want to get really creative. Please don't. A regular house icon is okay. You don't need to have multiple stories to it. You don't need to have a door. It's okay to just have a standard home. So here, these are simple icons, right? A house, a box, a sales tag, and a money bag. You did not see me use these. My icon does not need to have eyes or a beard or a bun. The box doesn't need to have multiple shades of colors. I don't even know what the third thing is. And the person, a happy customer making money, you don't need it, all right? Do not be too creative. Keep styles consistent and cohesive. So with the icons that I've used, if you notice, they were all silhouettes. They were all outlines. You want to keep your shading consistent when you start to use icons in your dashboard. The first level or the first line is okay. All of the icons are shaded. The second icon or the third icon on the second line has a different level of shading. It's not consistent with the other two. And the last one, you have two that are shaded and one that is just a silhouette. So when you're using icons, you want to keep them really consistent and cohesive on your dashboard. So here's an example of what you do not want to do. So here, the first user or the first icon is shaded and the others aren't. No, just keep it consistent. Like this. Here's a dashboard that I created on the Myers-Briggs Foundation and the various personality types. All of the icons that I've used in this dashboard are shaded. Same for here on the visualization on TED Talks. All of the icons used are shaded. Next, you want to use the dashboard theme and the colors when you're deciding which icons you want to use in your dashboard. Because I've used the Tableau purple on my dashboard, I would not want to use a green, a red, or a bright blue icon on my dashboard. You want to make sure that your icons are consistent with your theme because you want them to flow. You don't necessarily want them to stick out and draw attention. You just want them to be subtle. So this is not what you see me do. I did not have one random blue and one random blue person and one random blue sales tag. And I know a lot of clients and customers, they're always like, oh, I want more color in my dashboard. No. You do not need to just color your icons just to have more color. And we'll get into strategically using color in a second. And last but not least, Very similar to not being too creative, you want to make sure that you're reducing the graphic details that are in your icons. The reason you want to do this is because a lot of Tableau dashboards are now being viewed on mobile, right? So the smaller those icons, the less easier they are to identify. So that's why you want to make sure you're using really simple icons and not icons that have too much detail. Like this. Way too many lines, way too many things going on. The smaller this dashboard gets on a mobile device or a laptop, the harder it's going to be to identify exactly what those icons are. So here are my icon and art guidelines. However, do not limit your creativity. If you do decide to use creative icons, be sure that they are large enough in the viz for your end user to understand. And the reason I put this in here is because if you do know my work on Tableau Public, you'll be like, that's BS what she just said, because I use a lot of creative icons. But when you do use them, you want to make sure that they are large enough on your visualization that your audience knows exactly what they are. So here, the spaceman is large enough in the top left-hand corner. Here, a custom icon that I created is large enough so you can get every bit of detail of what's going on there. Now, how many of you are ready to use icons in your dashboard? Let me hear yeah. Alrighty, so here are some places that you can find free icons. The first one is my favorite, flaticon.com. As long as you register for a free account, you can use Facebook, your Google, you can customize your icons. So the chart that you see on the right-hand side, I've customized those two icons to have the colors that I wanted them to have for the dashboard. So you can get really custom with these icons on flaticon.com. Then you have the Noun project, which I believe is $9.99 a year. They have thousands of icons that you can customize the shading of them. Flat Icon, you can customize the graphic details. The Noun project, you can customize the overall color of it. And then you have Icons 8. So now let's talk about colors. The first thing you want to do when you're selecting colors for your dashboard is you want to let your brand colors form the basis. So here, as I showed you before, the customer, the VP for our scenario, gave us a particular color palette that's associated with the company. Now, the company that I'm working with is Tableau. So their conference colors are the palette that you see here. Now, I've used the Tableau palette to select the colors that I want in the dashboard. Here, I've used the purple and I've used the gray. For LinkedIn, here's a visualization that I did on LinkedIn. I've used LinkedIn's blue, gray, white, as well as a little bit of their yellow. Not too much yellow, though. Here, the Women's March in DC. Their brand colors are the dark blue, the salmon pink, and the beige. And I've used all three of those within the visualization. So let the brand colors start to form the basis of your design. Get inspiration from art and other visuals. Now, a lot of people ask me when I'm starting to create a visualization, where do I get inspiration from? And my answer is Google. Google gives me everything. Google got me my degree. So whenever I'm designing a new visualization, the first thing I do is I type in whatever that theme is. So if I'm creating a healthcare visualization, I type in healthcare infographic. And I'll find a visualization that catches my attention, like this one here. And I'll find things that I like about it, like the use of color, like the use of the boxes at the top. And I'll take bits and pieces of this infographic and incorporate it into my own. Here, I was creating a visualization on earthquakes that were taking place around the world. So I went to Google again, my best friend, and I simply typed in earthquake infographic. And this was the visualization that I saw. I love the blue and the gray and the pink that was used here. I love the earth tones. I love the map at the top. So I took those elements and I placed it into my own. So not only can you go to Google, but you can go to Tableau Public. How many of you use Tableau Public to find inspiration? If you do not, it's a great place. And now that they've adjusted the algorithm for their search engine, it's even better. So when I was creating the Superstore dashboard that you all saw just now, I went to Tableau Public and I typed in Superstore scorecard. And here's the inspiration that I found. So I'd like to give a shout out to John Duggar for the inspiration on this visualization. I took the elements that I saw here. Yeah, let's clap for John. I took a few elements that I saw here and I placed it with my own tweak in my final visualization. So if you're ever looking to get started or you need to be inspired, start with either Google or Tableau Public. Next, limit the number of dominant colors to 2, please. There have been so many times I've looked at dashboards that have 5, 6 different colors for no reason at all, just to have colors because the client wants it. So whenever you're creating your visualizations, you typically do not want to have more than 2 dominant colors. I prefer one dominant color, and then subtle colors like your blacks, your white, your grays. So here I've selected the Tableau purple and I've used it as my dominant color in the visualization. Here, my dominant color is yellow. Everything else is either white, black, or gray. And if you must use more than one, it's okay. Just don't use 3 or 4 or 5. So in this example, color has no purpose. We're just taking each of the brand colors because we want to, and we're placing them in this dashboard. It's very distracting to look at. Next, how many of you test your dashboards before you publish them or provide them to an end user? Awesome, more than I thought. My next guideline for colors are to create accessible color schemes and test them. What do I mean by that? Whenever you have a final visualization, there are tools out there that allow you to upload your images and see exactly what these images will look like for people who might have visual deficiencies. So here's that dashboard and several visual deficiencies such as red weak, red blind, green weak, green blind, blue weak, blue blind. As you can see in each of the images on the right-hand side, you can still easily convey what those colors are and the meaning of those colors, right? So I would say this is an okay color scheme to work with. Here, the red, the white, and the black, if we were to test them, here's what they would look like. Because red is only used to highlight, it's okay that it might appear green or orange for some individuals. I'm not doing a shade of red. Y'all already know where I'm going with this one. Yeah. So here's the standard red-green palette in Tableau, right? And here's what it would look like to an end user if you provided them with this map. And this is an example of exactly why you would want to test your dashboards and make sure that they are accessible before uploading them. Use color purposefully and for reinforcement. So in this visualization, I've strategically used color to define 2 things. One, the cities with the most sunlight hours, and then the gray for the cities with the least sunlight hours. So I would say in this example, I'm using color purposefully. So you want to make sure that whenever you're coloring items on your dashboard, you're thinking of a strategic way and the why of why you're placing it on the dashboard. Here I've used color for reinforcement. I've highlighted for every single region the top dietary requirement, and I've shaded it with the blue bar. And then the text below that now highlights that dietary requirement in a shade of blue. So I would say in this example, color is being used for reinforcement. In this example, it's being used for both purposefully and for reinforcement. In the paragraph above, color is being used to highlight some really important facts. In the chart down below, the red is used to distinguish between non-HBCU, which stands for historically black college and universities, and HBCUs. So that's the red stands for the HBCU in this one, and the white is non-HBCUs. And then here, in this example, color is used purposefully again. It's used to compare the levels of freedom across various countries. The green being, I think in this one it's either free, the yellow being partly free, and the purple being not free. So make sure when you're using color, you're using it for enforcement and you're using it with purpose. And last but not least, if you are stuck on how to color your dashboard, do not let that delay your process, right? If you're stuck, design in grayscale first and then add color strategically. And I'll walk you through what I mean by that. If I stripped away all of the color from that first dashboard, I'm still able to create the dashboard and create the charts that are needed. And then the first thing I want to do is start to add color to various areas. Now, whenever I'm stuck on how to color the dashboard, the first area that I go to is the title, the filter, and the band area. So on the left-hand side, I've decided to color the title area and just draw a simple box around the band area. On the right-hand side, I've drawn a line, a purple line, to separate the title area from the filters, and then another line around the bands. So the first step will be color your band area or your chart area, your band area, your title area, and your filter area. I decided that the chart on the left-hand side was my favorite. So I kept the shading of the title, and then I kept the band, the box around the band. Next, you want to look at each of your charts individually, from left to right, and start to see if color is going to be used for reinforcement or for purpose, right? So if I take a look at these charts from left to right, starting with the line graph, I do not need to highlight anything on the line graph, right? The dot already does that for me, the spark line. If I take a look at the chart next to it, I see that there are customers, orders, profit, sales, and profit ratio. But I don't want to color this chart because there are 4 different measures here, meaning I would have to use 4 different types of colors because you never want to use the same color for multiple measures. So I won't use color on that one. Next, I'm looking at the sales per region and per segment. And I think that this might be a good chart to start to add color to, so that the user can easily identify which region and which segment had the highest sales really quickly. Next, I'll go down to the map, right? The map has a bunch of dots for all of the states and a label for each of the sales. And instead of doing that, I can now use color on this map to shade each of the states from highest to lowest sales. And on the right-hand side, I have a bar chart that's already sorted descending, so there's no need to add color to it. But I don't want to have a black bar chart on the dashboard because black is a very dominant color. So I want to change that black to a light gray so that it's not as powerful on the dashboard and doesn't take away from the other shading of purple that I've used. So from there, you want to add your final touches. You want to color your worksheet titles. You want to test various shading options for your worksheet titles. You want to work with your font colors, and you want to test borders. How many of you do this? You shade every single chart title in a really bold and prominent color. Please don't. Right? It kind of takes away from your chart itself, right? That bold purple is taken away. How many of you draw borders around everything? My students love to do this when they were taking my class. Draw borders around all of their chart titles. There's really no need for it. I know, I have one right here in the front who loves to do it. It's okay to use a light shading for your chart titles. And it's okay not to shade them at all, as long as they're big enough, and if you change the color of them, they stand out just fine. You do not need to shade your chart titles all the time. So here are my color guidelines. Oh, I'm sorry, were y'all still getting that? I saw a couple looks, that's why. And last but not least, let's uncomplicate fonts. So the first thing you want to do when you're choosing a font on your dashboard is you want to stick to one that is legible and easy to understand. How many of you use Tableau's workbook formatting to select your font? It's a very powerful feature. Instead of having to go to each worksheet and manually change the font, if you simply go to Format in your toolbar, Workbook, on the left-hand side, your format pane will appear, and you can change the font for every single worksheet all at once. All right? Stick to one legible font. Here, I've picked one font in the dashboard. However, it is not legible. My favorite font is Tableau font, right? It's simple, it's easy to understand. I even use Times New Roman. The key to this is that you just want to use one font on your dashboard. Next, no more than 4 sizes of that font type. So the 4 font sizes that I focus on are 1, the dashboard title itself, which I give a size of either 22 to 28. 2, the worksheet titles, or your area titles, like sales per region here, and I give a size of 11 to 14. Your chart headers, which are the region names, so Central, East, West, I give a size of either 9 to 10, and sometimes I'll bold them. And last but not least, any additional text that is on the dashboard. And in the example that I've used, the dashboard has a dashboard title of a size 22, a worksheet title of 14, chart title of 9, and all additional text is 9 as well. Avoid custom fonts if possible. Custom fonts do not render well on Tableau Online or Tableau Public. If you're using Tableau Server, you can upload the font to the server and possibly view it. There have been some hiccups with it, but try to avoid them if possible. The left-hand side is a visualization that contains a native Mac font. And here's what happened when I uploaded that dashboard to Tableau Online. As you can see, it's not a font that's compatible. So if you're looking for Tableau Online compatible fonts, here they are. Be strategic with fonts and background colors. Now, what do I mean by this? Whenever you're creating your visualizations, not only do you want to test if the colors are visual deficiency accessible, right? You want to make sure that the font colors and the font sizes, as well as your background colors, that they are compatible with each other. So here's a tool that allows you to test whether or not your dashboard and your fonts that you're using are, and I'm gonna try to get this right, web content accessible guidelines. I think that's the end of it, the ending part of it. And what that means is that AA is the middle. It's your middle level. It's saying that it's the middle level of compliance. You have A, which is the lowest level, and then you have the AAA, which is the highest level of compliance, right? So here you can upload your text color, the hashtag for it, or the hex code, for it. You want to then incorporate the smallest font size that you have on there. So if your smallest font size is 9, you want to make sure that you're placing 9 in that box. Then you want to say if your 9 is regular, if it's bolded. And then you want to add in what is the background color of your dashboard. And here is where you can now tell if your dashboard is compliant. So I've taken the fonts that you see on the left-hand side. The smallest font is the blue in the paragraph. And I placed the hex code for it, the font size, the weight, as well as my background color, which is the dark gray, and I can see that my visualization is compliant. Versus this. Because this one failed, this tool is really neat in telling me how I can adjust the contrast of either the font or the background color to make it compliant. So those are the two green boxes on the right. Use color and/or bold text to emphasize. So in the example that I showed you before with this dashboard, I've used the red to emphasize the year, the number of participants, the overall HBCU stats, and the non-HBCU stats. The left-hand side is what it would look like if I didn't use the red to emphasize it, versus the right-hand side, it's easy to quickly identify the things that I want you to notice. In this example, I've used the color of the leadership as well as the tech in the dashboard title to help you easily identify when you're looking at the dashboard the metrics for the leadership as well as the tech. And here's what it would look like if I didn't do that. And last but not least, align left or right, stay away from center alignment. Here's a visualization that I created on breaking the barriers in baseball. It was a viz that I did for Black History Month. What I'll draw your attention to here is that for all of the paragraphs that I've listed, I've either left align them, or right align them. You want to stay away from center aligned text because whenever your user is reading, their eyes have to now scan to a new line or a new position for the next paragraph. And it's harder to read and harder to process. So if you want to center align, make sure that it's just short, simple text. Otherwise, left or right align. And here are my font guidelines. Now, a lot of you have looked at the various examples that I've given you, and some of you may be thinking, well, this is neat and all, but how can I use it in business, right? Because that's what a lot of you are here for. Your company sent you, and you want to go back with something that you can use on your day-to-day jobs. Well, here's an example that I've created with the team at Lovelytics, right? Here's a marketing dashboard. The goal of this dashboard is to create a dashboard that tracks the 6 marketing KPIs that we look at. Here, I've created a template using the logo in the top right-hand corner, horizontal boxes or containers to lay out the rest of them, and I've designed everything to a grid. Next, color here is used to identify the various platforms. Light blue for LinkedIn, Facebook, red for YouTube, blue again for Twitter, yellow for miscellaneous platforms, and purple for Instagram. I've used art to substitute the label of the platforms. I've used art to substitute those labels with now icons for them so it's easy to identify when you're looking at the various metrics. And last but not least, I've stuck to my 4 font rule. The dashboard title is a size 26. The section headers are a size 12. The worksheet titles are a size 9, and the additional text is a size 9 as well. So, start with your audience and their requirements. Build your template and add your views. Incorporate design elements that will enhance your story. Add color strategically, icons for charm, and use the rule of 4 when adding fonts. And in closing, anyone can be a designer. It's not something you're born with. It's not something that's exclusive to a select few. All it takes is practice while keeping a few design secrets in mind. Thank you all. I'm Chantilly Jagunar. Hope you've enjoyed my section.